to this. And I would like, first of all, to introduce to you the speakers of this panel. It's Mr. Norimisama Shomonura, who is a UN Resident Coordinator and UNDP Resident Representative in Kazakhstan. I would like as well to introduce to you Mr. Aida Arifkanov, Chairman of Biderek, which is a very financial institution in this country. It's as well a pleasure to welcome Ben Slay, who is sitting next to me, the Senior Advisor of UNDP's Regional Bureau of Europe and the CIS. Welcome, Ben. You will deliver us immediately now some introductory remark in this subject. I would like as well to welcome Thomas Miro, Chairman of HSH Nordbank, former EBRD President and Independent Director of Biderek. I would like as well to welcome Philippe Yeo, Chairman of Economic Development Innovation Singapore, EDIS, and as well an independent member of the board of Biderek. As well, I would like to introduce to you Alina Aldambergen, Chairman of the Stock Exchange of Kazakhstan, former member of the board of Biderek. So you see a strong presence of this very important financial institution. As well, I would like to welcome Dinara Saisarapova, representative of Business Kazakhstan. Welcome. And on the left side, you see Macha Favale, very close since many, many years to Kazakhstan, founder and CEO of Blingby, Independent Director of Development Bank of Kazakhstan. And as well, I would like to introduce to you Antonio Somma, member of the Board of Director of Solutions Capital Management, Independent Director of Development Bank of Kazakhstan. So I believe really you see a lot of financial know-how and business know-how in this panel. I would like as well to introduce myself. I'm Klaus Mangold. I'm as well an independent director of Biderek, but with many functions in international companies all over this world. I believe that in this panel, we would mainly focus to three major issues. One is which role business can contribute to the future success of this country, which is a wonderful country, which has undergone a lot of transition over the last years. And I believe it's very important to have a look to the future now. What will be the next step if we are talking about changing the future role of business? And this is something I believe where as well Biderek can contribute a lot. We should as well have a look to the experiences of sustainable business from around the globe. And this is the contribution then of the panelists. What will be the role of business in a sustainable development and economic transformation? And we have seen a lot of transformation in Central Asia over the last couple of years. We have seen as well a lot of transformation in Central and Eastern Europe, where as well you, Mr. Sen, have been working very much as well in what you have published. And last but not least, we have to have a look to the key reforms if we are looking forward and to look on the agenda of what we will achieve. Sustainable Development Goals is a key issue, SDG. And I believe that Ben Slay, who will now start with giving us some introductory remarks, is best placed to do so because he is in charge for United Nations Development Policy, UNDPs. And I'm sure that Ben, you will give us some highlights about what will characterize then our discussion in the panel and together with you later on. Ben, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Klaus. Excellencies, distinguished colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, it's really a pleasure to be here. With your permission, I have a few PowerPoint slides I would like to show. So if it would be possible to present these slides, если можно загрузить презентацию, был бы очень благодарен. What I would like to do is talk about the role of sustainable business models by commercial companies in achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. That's not it. And in so doing, I wish to, thank you very much, make essentially the business case for sustainable business by focusing essentially on three big questions. The first is, what is sustainable development and the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs? Second, I want to talk about sustainable business models, really along three dimensions. The first are inclusive business models that focus on companies reaching out to the base of the pyramid, people at close to the poverty line or vulnerability in some sense, and how to bring them into the formal economy to make them consumers, workers with a stake in the economy and can contribute to the growth of business, sales, profits, and the bottom line. Second is how companies can improve their competitiveness, especially in the long term, by investing in social and environmental risk management. And the third issue is tapping emerging environmental, social, and governance-related finance. But of these three topics, for reasons of time, I'm really going to focus on the first one, the inclusive business models, focusing on the base of the pyramid people, bringing them into the market in a way that can benefit companies, and then say a few words about how this could perhaps be most usefully applied to Kazakhstan. Just to be sure that we're all on the same page. In September of 2015, all of the member states of the United Nations, so all 193 governments of the world, including the government of the Republic of Kazakhstan, adopted at the United Nations the Agenda 2030 for Sustainable Development and the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, as the monitoring framework for tracking progress in implementing this agenda. And one can identify four key features that underpin this agenda and manifest themselves in the Sustainable Development Goals. The first is universality, that sustainable development pertains to all countries in the world, rich and poor alike, the United States as well as South Sudan. The second is integration, that sustainable development is about finding integrated solutions to social, economic, and environmental development challenges that simultaneously address these in win-win or triple win ways, if you like. A third key element is that although the world is getting richer and richer all the time and incomes are rising, not all boats are rising equally quickly, and some people, indeed many people, are at risk of being left behind. So leaving no one behind so that everyone benefits from shared prosperity, World Bank phrase, is a third key element. And the fourth key element is multi-sectorality partnerships. This is not just an agenda of governments, it's an agenda of civil society, and it's an agenda of the global business community as well, because without partnerships and a genuinely intersectoral approach, it's not going to be possible to achieve this vision. Okay. Now, why do we need the SDGs? And as this graphic shows you, there are 17 of them with 169 targets associated with it. The reason we need them goes back to the comments and arguments that were made in the plenary yesterday and again today, that we still have 800 million people suffering from extreme poverty and hunger in the world. And this poses all sorts of threats and challenges to prospects for global stability, including the stability of businesses. There are more than 1 billion people who lack access to electricity. Without electricity, you can't connect to the internet, you can't benefit from global connectivity, you are left behind. We have 2.4 billion people who are living without improved sanitation, putting them at all sorts of risk of diseases and other development challenges. The climate change has been referred to many times. We were fortunate to have former UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon talking about the importance of the Paris Climate Accords, and former President Hollande also speaking about this yesterday. Decarbonization has been promised as well as is needed, recognized as such not only by governments, but by municipalities, regions, and increasingly by business as well. In order to find jobs and gainful employment for new people entering the labor market with population growth, something like 470 million jobs globally need to be created annually for the new labor market entrants. And then we have the problem of inequality. Roughly 1% of the world owns more than 50% of the global wealth, while the poorest, 60%, owns less than 10% of the global wealth. We all know about these problems. The point is there are specific sustainable development goals with indicator and target frameworks that are designed to help governments and their partners address these goals. And this is something that is potentially profoundly relevant for business. Now, normally in the past when we've talked about business and sustainable development, it's been from a corporate social responsibility to emphasize the moral or philosophical dimensions of companies' engagement. But increasingly, companies understand that engaging in sustainable development is not just something that's philosophically desirable. Sustainable business models can be profitable business models. Now, there are three key features of sustainable business models that are emerging. The first is that sustainable development is seen as a commercial opportunity. If you do sustainable development better than your competitors, you will make more money. Companies increasingly understand this. It's not about the birds and the bees, it's not about PR, it's about the bottom line. Second, and the key element that I'll be focusing on, is that sustainable development is very much about expanding the market, expanding sales by focusing on the base of the pyramid, bringing new consumers into the market, especially in middle-income countries who previously may not have been able to afford to participate in the economy and buy your products, but increasingly in the context of a growing economy are able to do so. And the third is that competitiveness is not only about what your labor costs are, it's about the long-run investment in environmental and social risk management. Now, to take advantage of these opportunities for sustainable business models, companies need partnerships, not only with international development agencies and development banks, such as the institutions we have represented here, and not only with governments, but also with civil society, who have a lot of the answers to how to actually do this, to reach out to vulnerable communities, households, and workers, and also increasingly the emerging world of environmental, social, and governance-related investment flows. That is to say, it's not only the world of productive companies that are increasingly thinking about sustainable business models, it's also the world of finance. Well, finance, how much are we talking about to finance the sustainable development goals? There are various estimates. For example, according to the Better Business, Better World report of the Business and Sustainable Development Commission, it's estimated that achieving the sustainable development goals will cost $5 to $7 trillion globally. It's understood that most of this money will have to come from the commercial actors, the private sector. And in developing countries, middle income and lower income countries, roughly $2.4 trillion is what's required. On the other hand, there's a lot of money out there. According to the same study, total global financial assets under management are estimated at $290 trillion, so much more than the financing needs. And this amount is growing roughly 5% annually. Now, recently, JP Morgan came out with a study just about a week ago that says of that $290 trillion, roughly 23 trillion, or about 10%, in these assets under management are already following some form of environmental, social, and governance sustainability approaches. There's a lot of money out there looking for sustainable development investment opportunities. And JP Morgan also finds that money that is managed under the framework of systematic integration with environmental, social, and governance metrics. Okay? This is $2.5 trillion already. So what's the point? There's already enough sustainable development finance out there, primarily in the private sector, to finance the sustainable development goals. So companies that want to take advantage of the opportunities for sustainable development also increasingly have opportunities to finance those activities commercially. Okay. Now, I talked about the base of the pyramid idea. What's interesting is that many companies have estimated, many studies have estimated that if the sustainable development goals are achieved, it will not only cost money, but generate trillions of dollars in new business opportunities, roughly $12 trillion, according to this Better Business, Better World report. This is annually by 2030, which is when the Sustainable Development Goals terminus is. And there have been various estimates of different sectors of where these business opportunities are. Roughly $4 trillion a year annually would be in energy and raw materials. Another $3.7 trillion would be in cities and urban transport. We have then $2 trillion roughly in food and agriculture, and then another roughly $2 trillion in health. And then if we disaggregate this more specifically in terms of sectors that are of interest to companies in Kazakhstan, well, construction alone would estimate the estimated benefits of reaching out to people at the base of the pyramid would be $1.4 trillion a year in new business if the SDGs can be met. Energy efficiency investments, $1.3 trillion a year. Clean energy, so renewables, hydro, solar, biogas. There's another $1.2 trillion in business opportunities. Reductions in food waste, agriculture, so important, agriculture for the economy, especially the rural economy of Kazakhstan. So here's an example of specific sectors where it's now been estimated what the financial benefits are of reaching out and bringing into the market households and people that are at the bottom of the pyramid close to the poverty line. Okay. Well, this raises the question of who are these people? How many of them are there at the base of the pyramid? How can we estimate the size of this potential business opportunity? Well, the G20 Inclusive Business Framework uses the idea that people at the base of the pyramid are living at or below $8 a day in purchasing power parity terms, so PPP, $8 a day. But that is a metric that may make sense in a lot of G20 countries, like in the European Union or the United States, but it also includes a lot of people in developing countries, roughly 4.2 trillion, according to the World Bank's POVCalNet database. So if we say that globally, roughly 60% of the population is at $8 a day or less, this is a pretty big base for the pyramid, so to speak, and we would like to have something that might be a bit more discriminating, especially in a middle-income country like Kazakhstan. Well, the World Bank recommends the use of $5.50 a day in PPP terms as a poverty threshold in middle-income countries. But this is still 3.4 billion people globally, and that's nearly half the world's population, and probably half the world's population is not the base of the pyramid. So another possibility is to look at the extreme poverty threshold, which is $1.90 per day in PPP terms. And here we have about 11% of the global population, or 775 million people. So here are ways to think about how many people actually are at the base of the pyramid. And then we can ask the question of where are they? In which countries? And I've lost the clicker.
Doesn't work.
There we go.
No.
Okay. So here in broad brushstrokes are where, if we use the World Bank poverty figures, most of these people, of course, are in India and China, because most of the world's people in general are in India and China. Interestingly, a big chunk of them are in neighboring Uzbekistan, but we also have roughly 14 million people in the EU. If we use the $5.50 per day in the Eurasian Economic Union, it's roughly 10 million people. If we use the $1.90 per day, it's somewhat less, but we still see we have some people. But let's now look at this a bit closer to home and see what the numbers suggest for Kazakhstan and neighbors. And here we have thousands of people. So in Tajikistan, more than half of the population is living below this metric at $5.50 per day. And still roughly 500,000 people living below $1.90 per day. So for Kazakh businesses that are increasingly interested in doing business in your neighbors to the south, this might be of interest. Kyrgyzstan, a somewhat similar story. Russia, of course, very important just across the business, the border. There's still 3.6 million people that are below this. And so what's the point? You can actually generate some numbers for Kazakhstan and partners in the Eurasian Economic Union, towns, urban areas within the region. But what's the point? new consumers in to your markets and increase your sales, and in this way promote sustainable development and make buying the bottom line with doing the right thing. So on that note, a reality. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Ben, thank you so much for this presentation. I believe on the one hand, it's a wake-up call when one sees enough. Refers as well to the panel we could listen this morning with the Prime Minister and as well yesterday listening to the speech of the President. Thank you so much. Unfortunately, I must ask all panelists that we have limited time only because we have to close the meeting at 1:45. So I would like first to invite Mr. Norimisama Shimomura and to give your statement, and the first part of these questions and statements will certainly be about the business sector efforts around the SDGs and as well the way in which the business sector can play an important role, what has been as well a part of the presentation of you, Ben, and I believe really that without business and only pointing to the government, it will not be possible to change what we have to change. So, the floor is yours.
Welcome to Kazakhstan and welcome to this very important session. This is a discussion, as Ben already started, about the role of business sector in achieving the global development agenda. I do want to really thank the Biterek National Holding for co-organizing this event together with the United Nations system here in Kazakhstan. As many of you are already familiar, the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, were adopted by the world leaders back in 2015. The 17 goals range from, you saw it already, poverty eradication, education, health, women's advancement, environmental protection, good governance, all sorts of issues. The idea is to ensure that no one is left behind as we move forward in creating and benefiting from a better world. While governments are accountable for achieving the SDGs, the business sector holds the key to the solution. With its unmatched capacity for innovation, investment, and job creation. Take an example of an advanced economy, let's say United States of America. Private industries generated approximately 87% of its $19.4 trillion GDP in 2017. This is US. Private sector employs 91% of all employees in the United States, and 99% of them work for small businesses. It's therefore obvious that without the dynamic potentials of the private and business sectors, SDGs will not be achieved. At the same time, we should be aware that no companies would thrive over time without working on the SDGs. Why? First, successful businesses require stable business environment. SDGs is a best investment to prevent conflicts, mitigate the impacts of natural disasters, and create level playing field for investors, entrepreneurs. Secondly, companies must work on the SDGs for themselves because companies can stay ahead of curves by working on the SDGs. What do I mean? Because the companies will be able to preempt the changing taste of the consumers who increasingly prefer to buy cleaner, safer, and more human rights friendly products. By working on the SDGs, companies can be ready for changes in regulations in the advanced markets that may restrict future sales of polluting products like gasoline-run cars in advanced economies. Businesses are not alone, however, to work on the SDGs. Here in Kazakhstan, I got a first-hand experience of seeing how some of the most innovative measures are realized through collaboration between the public and private sector. For instance, the United Nations work with Public Damu Entrepreneurship Development Fund under the Biterek Holding to incentivize small private investments for low carbon projects in 15 cities across the country. This and many other experiences point to the important roles the state institutions can play to give the private sector the right incentives to work on the sustainability agenda. Today's meeting is to ask ourselves how, in concrete ways, businesses can effectively work on the SDGs, beyond just talking. Many companies already work on corporate social responsibility, promoting environmental awareness, healthy lifestyle, and many others. This can only be encouraged to continue. At the same time, companies must go further by creating and responding to increasing consumer demands for products and services that are SDG friendly. For example, products that uses energy-saving technologies, recycled materials, and use less water. Businesses need to embrace this positive trend and seek every opportunity to integrate this thinking into their usual practice, which leads to my final point. SDGs must become part and parcel of businesses' strategies, operations, and processes, among others, through the application of human rights and gender equality principles, use of green procurement and logistics, recycling and reuse of materials, adoption of energy-saving measures, and so forth. So with this, let me stop and give the floor back to the distinguished panelists. But I would like to only stress that United Nations system here in Kazakhstan and around the world is committed to fostering closer engagement between the businesses, the state, and of course, many other stakeholders, including consumers, citizens. Together, we can make a meaningful contributions towards sustainable human development in Kazakhstan and beyond. So thank you very much.
Norimasa, thank you. I believe it is very important that you were pointing out the impact of the SDGs to the Kazakhstan development in the future. Thank you for this, and I believe that you know the country very well. So,
including the UN, EBRD, EIB, the Asian Development Bank, all have been strongly engaged since many, many years. And I think there's still a lot to do in this respect. A country to transform traditional coal pits into something that is less energy consuming, less dangerous to the environment than it has been so far. It touches upon the question of how to provide energy to big cities like Astana. We heard of the intention of the authorities to build a new big pipeline to Astana in order to substitute coal by gas. This is very important, and it will not happen without the private sector. The state needs to say, the authorities need to say what they do want. I hope so in coordination with international institutions on the ground of the SDGs. But in the end, the private sector will need to implement it. And a third sector I would name here is construction in terms of infrastructure and traffic. If one looks at this wonderful city of Astana, which has developed in a way no one would have foreseen 10 or 20 years ago, it's clear that congestion with automobiles is a clear issue. So the question will be whether in a partnership between the state, the city authorities, and private investors, it will be possible to build up a public transport system in this city and in Almaty certainly as well, but Astana is, I think, an example at hand that corresponds to the SDG goals that we have heard. That would be three very concrete areas. Let me add one final remark, Klaus. I think we always have to take into consideration one specificity of Kazakhstan, which is not unique in the world, but which differentiates it from very many other countries. That is, its very big surface with a very small, relatively small population. And I think what is in need is that public authorities, together with the private sector, develop ideas and implement them, how to serve the country with this specificity in the perspective of the SDGs. That means, what can you do to boost connectivity, so to substitute many physical infrastructure needs, because they will just be much too expensive for such a large country like Kazakhstan. What can you do to implement SDGs in terms of the lower pyramids, but also in terms of avoiding that rural areas, remote areas, are detached from an overall wealth accrual? I think this is very important, that as helpful others will be, as much it may make sense that Kazakhstan looks at Singapore as a shining example, or looks at Germany in other respects, but the situation of Kazakhstan is, in so far, very, very different. It's not a city-state. It's not a country with 80 million people, but it's a country with 18 million people in a big surface. So I think what we are in need of is an interface, a cooperation of public sector, international institutions, and the private sector that takes into account this specific situation of the country. Thank you.
Thomas, thank you very much. Just to hand over as well now, to save some time, to Philippe Yeo. But I believe it was very important to point out against the specifics of Kazakhstan if it comes to transition. Philippe, you have a strong experience between business and governmental responsibilities in Singapore, and you have a broad international experience. What would be your advice to Kazakhstan, what you know very well as a country out of your functions as a member, independent member of the board of BIDIRECT? What could be the lessons you would like to give to Kazakhstan if it comes to the development of the SDGs?
Okay. From my experience, I believe that creating and maintaining a pro-business environment is the most important state intervention. The state must not interfere, but the state must encourage the businessmen to start the business, to grow the business, and to close the business if they fail, and encourage those who are successful to grow. For those who are not successful, allow them to exit. Now, in most businesses, every country, small and medium enterprises are the base of the economy. So it's very important for government to recognize the 4 factors for SMEs. SMEs needs money, SMEs needs market, and SME needs management and know-how. Now, in the area of money, we do not want to subsidize companies. We want the companies to be business viable. So the key is for the state not to give them money freely, but to use the banking system. What the state can do is to help, maybe guarantee part of the loan, or maybe subsidize the interest. But the state should not process loans or give loans. It's very dangerous. There's a lot of political pressure. In Singapore experience, we use commercial banks, local bank, international bank to process the loans. And then we guarantee them of 50%. So that's key. The second is the markets. For a small country like Singapore, or for a big country like Kazakhstan, the global market is the most important. We should not be just focusing the companies on the local market. We must encourage them to look for new markets. So the government's job is to help them to export. That's very important. The third challenge for SMEs is management. Management is the greatest weakness for small SMEs. So the government must encourage SMEs to go to education, pick up business studies, especially in finance, accounting, personnel management. These are things that the state can subsidize. The state should subsidize education. Last and not whole is know-how. small and medium enterprises need new know-how, where the government can encourage universities and research development agents to allow the know-how to be transferred to them, allowing the intellectual property passed on, because without that, small and medium enterprises cannot have new ideas. So if these three, money, markets, and management and know-how are given, SMEs can grow. Thank you.
Thank you. Very clear point. Very brief, so thank you so much. I believe really now we should come more to the question of what kind of reforms are needed from a business perspective and as well addressing governments if it comes to the further development of the SDGs. And I would like first to start on from your side, on the right, with Macha Favale, who has responsibilities in Kazakhstan since many years, knowing very well this country and with a strong international business experience. Masha, if it comes to the market point of view, is it necessary to support commercial banks using public?
And thank you, Baitarek, for having me on the panel. The short answer is it should be no. Now, many of you know that I was intimately involved with the financial crisis and the bail-in benchmark that we created in Kazakhstan with BTA Bank, Timir and Alliance. But at that time, there was a global financial risk, there was a global financial crisis, and contextually, there needed to be action. But the action we took at that time, which made Kazakhstan create a benchmark, was a bail-in. It wasn't a straight government support whereby you leave investors and shareholders to completely walk free while the government sustains all the losses. That was not done. So now you have to look at today, when there isn't an imminent crisis, when there is poor management, when there is irresponsibility, and you have to look at the actions of government within the policy of sustainable development. You cannot have an economic sustainable development policy with hobbled banks. You cannot also allow for moral hazard. So, Klaus, really the answer is it's contextual, but at this day and age, Kazakhstan has to take a more active role in closing banks, in punishing managements that don't know what they're doing or are not efficient, consolidating where necessary, but being very vigilant in not creating a behemoth bank that then recreates systematic risk, potentially in the future. So it's a nuanced answer, but the answer is, if you want a bank and you're in the commercial sector, learn to walk alone. Learn to be professional. Learn to manage your bank. If you don't, your bank should collapse, it should fail. And with that said, if there is going to be any government support, it should be in the form of deposit guarantees to those who are exposed, but not necessarily helping bailing out shareholders or investors, that their job is to be proficient and professional. So if you want a sustainable economy, you need to have a strong financial system.
Thank you. Thank you. Very clear. There would be one, as you were indicating, the financial crisis a couple of years ago, where you were very much supporting the government to find the right tools. Maybe that afterwards we could come to one interesting point in our discussion, coming back as well to the presentation of you, Ben. Actually, we are living in a world which is developing quite well. When it comes to the next crisis, I believe the question would be, can we continue with the same encouragement in looking to SDGs when we are coming back to a global crisis, especially in financial markets? But we stock this question for later on. So next, I would like to ask Antonio. Antonio, if you are looking to the potential of SDGs implementation in Central Asia, do you believe now, as it comes to a more close relationship between the states in Central Asia, especially looking as well to the development in Uzbekistan. Do you believe that Kazakhstan could be a potential leader if we are looking to the implementation of SDGs in this region?
Good morning. Thank you for this question. Well, your question, I guess, is twofold. Question number one is there potential for implementation of SDGs in the region? And second is what could be the role of Kazakhstan? The answer to the first question is yes. I mean, the short answer is yes. There is potential. Why there is potential? Because of the several reasons. One is the content of the SDG, which can be a guide for the existing reforms, country by country, but it can also be a guide for the reforms that are still not there. It can be an outline of the reforms that should happen. Second, because the overall framework of the SDGs is about individual SDGs and also the link between them. And those links also help make sense of the overall reforms that are happening or should happen in the region. Last but not least, SDGs for this region in particular can be a very powerful direction when it comes to shared projects in the region. And the obvious example is the One Belt, One Road project, which can benefit as long as it takes the content and the good directions that are provided for by the SDGs. Now, the second part of the question is about the potential role of Kazakhstan. Many data have been shown earlier by Ben and the previous speakers. I would like to add to that there is a point in understanding what the role could be for Kazakhstan and the other countries of the region. There is a point to be made regarding another report of the UN, which is the dashboard report, where there is a ranking of 150 countries around the world on how they are doing towards the achievement of the SDGs. Looking at the Central Asian region compared to the rest of the world, what we see is that Kazakhstan ranks solidly in the first half of the performance overall when it comes to the SDGs. And Kazakhstan is not alone. This is important in the region because also Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan are ranking well. In particular, we see that there is a very good job is being done on eradication of poverty and at the same time on the inequality, combating inequality. It's not finished, this job, but it's on good way. There are, of course, common challenges. The main one, I would like to mention only one. The main one is the common challenge about achieving sustainable growth. And this is very important because this SDG is the one that can sustain many other SDGs when it's implemented. Now, Kazakhstan in particular, beyond the ranking, Kazakhstan has already shown that it has a method systematically in the past years, before the SDGs and now during the SDGs era. Kazakhstan has consistently incorporated and implemented in its own reforms the global standards. In the Strategy 2050, in the 5 reforms implemented with the 100 steps. More recently, a couple of years back, Kazakhstan was one of 3 countries in the world that had a country program agreement with the OECD, which is a structured form of cooperation to be implemented in the reforms of the countries. Well, Kazakhstan is the only country that today has already closed the project, finished the project, and implementing already the outcomes of the project. So there is a method there. There is as well in the region varied performance when one looks at individual SDGs. For example, Kazakhstan is doing a quite good job on gender equality. And looking at the rankings, ranks in the top 25% of 150 countries in the world. On the other hand, a country like Uzbekistan is securing food security goal is quite advanced in Uzbekistan. At the same time as well, the climate change resilience in the country. So what do we do with this? A region that has some common challenges, one top performer with other countries as well, ranking very well. And also opportunities for cross-fertilization and peer exchange. Well, in that respect, I would like to table a proposal for this panel, which is that Kazakhstan could take the lead in establishing a platform, a hub, maybe, a SDGs hub for the region, which will be a platform for constant ongoing exchange on individual SDGs amongst the various governments and business sectors in the region to understand from each other, what are you doing better than me? And why, how are you doing better than me? What can I learn from you? What can I teach you? And I think that will make sense because looking at SDGs, they have several features, but two to me are quite interesting and important for this proposal I'm making, which is they are at the same time aspirational and inspirational. They are aspirational because everyone is given the same target. And there is no competition. If I perform faster than another country, I'm not winning anything. That other country will have to get there anyway. They are inspirational because when looking at the rankings don't tell me that I'm not doing well or, yeah, they tell me that, but more importantly, they point at those countries that can be seen as an inspiration. And therefore, I can go individually to Kazakhstan to ask, hey, what are you doing well on gender parity, better than another country? And what can you transfer? So, in the end, to answer the question and to close, yes, Kazakhstan could take the lead, maybe with the UN creating this hub for SDGs. At the same time, I would look first and foremost the opportunities for collaboration with other countries in the region, the opportunities to better inform the continuous reforms that are being implemented, and also to make the big current initiative at regional level, the Belt and Road Initiative, SDGs compliant, together, of course, with the other countries in the region. Thank you.
Antonio, thank you. As you are arguing about a very prominent role of Kazakhstan in the region, do you believe that this can be as well a role by which Kazakhstan could have a very strong position if it comes to a peacemaking process together with other countries of Central Asia in Afghanistan? And could this be as well something where we could see some support of the whole region to develop this in a way as well that we see SDGs there?
Yeah, thank you for this additional question, because actually this is a perfect example where Kazakhstan can take the lead, but they must take the lead together, working together with their fellow Central Asian countries. Well, peace is one of the SDGs. So yes, it makes sense. Second, Kazakhstan is already active in Afghanistan. And the foreign aid of Kazakhstan is focusing right now in Afghanistan, but not only in terms of financing. They are working in the country. And this certainly is a fantastic example where other countries in the region who are facing exactly the same issues as Kazakhstan has been a somewhat neighbor of Afghanistan, and therefore all the risks for the country. Other countries in the region are facing exactly the same risks.
Thank you. Because when we are talking about a prominent role of Kazakhstan, I believe that we should always be aware, especially seen from the outside of the non-Central Asian countries, that we have here today a group of countries representing around about 70 million people. So this is really something which is more and more important as well if these countries are coming closer together. Alina Altenbergen, in my paper, it's shown that you are the chairman of the Kazakh Stock Exchange, but for me, you are the chairwoman. So I believe really that Kazakhstan as well has taken a very important responsibility over the last couple of years, together with the Astana International Finance Center, to develop financial markets even more and to look forward that just in this big market of 70 million people, financial services have a certain role of leadership for the region as a whole. How does this reflect in the overall financial positioning if it comes to the AIFC and as well to the development of the Kazakh Stock Exchange? And as you are really one of the leading businesswomen in the country, do you believe as well that women will play a more important role in the Kazakh environment in the next couple of years?
Thank you for the question. I think this is an important question to understand for audience, talking about the role of stock exchange, about gender equality in Kazakhstan. So if you allow me, I will switch to Russian so that more people can understand the issue. Когда мы говорим о целях устойчивого развития, одна из целей предписана теми документами, которые приняла ООН и к которым присоединился Казахстан, это гендерное равенство. В Казахстане, я думаю, в нашем регионе, в целом на пространстве СНГ, эта тема как бы вызывает иногда непонимание. Какое гендерное равенство, если мы даже посмотрим на этот зал, то здесь очень много женщин, которые участвуют и заняты, и получают образование и так далее. На самом деле эта цель, она предусмотрена в целом для всех стран, и поэтому она как бы направлена, начиная там, от того, чтобы защитить женщин в целом и предоставить им возможности, да, то есть равные возможности с мужчинами. И в некоторых странах это на самом деле проблема, до того, чтобы вовлечь женщин в больше принятие экономических решений. И вот здесь я хотела привести такую статистику, что да, есть страны, в которых женщины даже не могут обучаться. Есть страны, в которых высокий уровень домашнего насилия, когда не защищены права женщин законодательством. И вот они именно благодаря этим целям устойчивого развития предпринимают шаги, чтобы законодательно закрепить и принять меры. Почему женщины рассматриваются сейчас, ну и в целом, и мы сами это понимаем, что это экономическая единица, это дополнительные рабочие руки, и в стареющем глобальном населении планеты очень важно, что больше женщин задействовано в экономической деятельности. Почему к Казахстану это меньше относится, и поэтому очень часто, когда вот разговариваешь, и я вот, например, часто тоже как лидер женщина даю различные лекции для студентов, гендерное равенство воспринимается больше, что это будет неравенство для мужчин. Женщин так защитят, что бедных мужчин ущемлят в правах. На самом деле, я как пыталась объяснить, это очень широкий топик. И если смотреть на позиции Казахстана, вот по Всемирному экономическому форуму, Казахстан занимает 52 место. Почему? Потому что Конституции, законодательно, все меры приняты для того, чтобы женщины имели равные возможности, чтобы права женщин были защищены. То есть любая молодая девушка, женщина имеет право на учебу, на труд. В Казахстане в целом очень высокий уровень грамотности, большой охват детей, которые посещают начальную школу, получают среднее образование. И даже больше женщин по ним получают высшее образование по сравнению с мужчинами. И если говорить в целом, то в Казахстане 50% из занятого населения это женщины, то есть женщины работают наравне с мужчинами. Но когда мы переходим от среднего менеджмента к высшему менеджменту, здесь начинается изменение статистики. То есть только 37% из руководящего состава занимают женщины, начиная со среднего менеджмента, высшего, и в бизнесе, и в власти. И если мы переходим, например, уже к парламенту, то только 20% женщин являются депутатами, Примерно 10% женщин занимают высшие позиции в бизнесе, и только 5% женщин являются министрами. И, в принципе, если посмотреть в Казахстане, то у нас как бы разложилась так статистика, что мужчины, значит, двигаются по одной линии, женщины по другой. И вот если мы возьмем сектор МСБ, как вы знаете, в Казахстане действует и Ассоциация деловых женщин, и при Национальной палате предпринимателей женский форум, то всячески поддерживается участие женщин именно в частном бизнесе. Здесь позиции женщины высокие, то есть, например, от 50 до 60% руководителей частных компаний, занятых в торговле, в сельском хозяйстве, в недвижимости, занимают женщины, они и бизнес-владельцы, и менеджеры. Если говорить по различным сферам экономики, то очень много женщин занято в социальной, медицинской сфере, в таком труде. В финансовой сфере где-то 50% женщин занято. Но почему мы начинаем говорить в целях устойчивого развития о том, чтобы женщины занимали роль и в управленческом персонале, как в политике, так и в экономике? Потому что мы говорим об устойчивом развитии. Устойчивое развитие бизнеса – это взвешенное принятие решений на руководящем уровне. Женщины здесь уже проводили различные исследования и в финансах, и даже в торговле, и финансовыми инструментами, что женщины всегда взвешенно подходят к принятию решений и сбалансируют те решения, которые принимаются правлением или советом директоров, что позволяет компании быть более конкурентоспособной. Учитывая, что мы, как казахстанцы, имеем цель стать одной из самых конкурентоспособных стран, войти в 30 стран, 50 стран, то здесь нам необходимо именно двигать количество женщин, которые не только просто являются высокопрофессиональной трудящейся силой, да, но и также участвуют в управлении. И здесь стоит вопрос для Казахстана, чтобы создать возможности для женщин. Здесь у нас есть несколько нюансов. Это возможности и желания женщин. Очень часто мы видим, что у женщин нет желания. И с чем оно связано? Это с тем, что есть определенные невидимые уже предпосылки, что более сложно конкурировать в мужском мире. На самом деле такая ситуация во всем мире есть, в Казахстане она тоже есть. Во-вторых, возможности для женщин. Традиционно в казахстанских семьях предполагается, что женщина обязана нести ответственность за домашнее хозяйство, за семью, за родителей. И здесь поэтому важно создать возможности, чтобы были и детские сады, и помощь по присмотру за детьми, и также помощь по присмотру за стареющим населением. В Казахстане тоже фактор стареющего населения срабатывает, и очень часто эта роль падает на уровень женщины. Поэтому, что я хотела сказать, я призываю еще раз всех женщин создавать себе возможности. Ваше участие в руководящем составе компании важно для компании. Мужчинам создавать возможности, чтобы компании приглашали женщин на совет директоров. И в некоторых секторах и на уровне правительства мы видим, что все такие возможности предоставляют. Говоря я хотела бы еще остановиться, почему Казахстанская фондовая биржа на этом специализируется. Потому что Казахстан присоединился к целям устойчивого развития, но по всему миру цель устойчивого развития также проходит через определенные органы или институты. Вот биржи во всем мире имеют инициативу по поддержке цели устойчивого развития. То есть мы уставляем требованиям компаниям при привлечении финансирования выполнять уже определенные параметры. В частности, мы фокусируемся на 3 параметрах. Это экологическая, социальная ответственность и корпоративное управление. В рамках социальной ответственности это и возможности сотрудников, и тоже параметры гендерного равенства. В этих целях мы разрабатываем методологии. На уровне Казахстана мы пока разработали методологию, описали те коэффициенты и параметры, на которые мы смотрим. Сейчас мы проводим тренинги, рекомендуем компаниям их принимать. Но я хочу сказать, что если в Казахстане, опять же, мы находимся на определенном уровне развития, то, говоря о мире, уже если наши казахстанские компании конкурируют за финансированием и пытаются привлечь его на лондонской бирже, то это уже обязательное требование. И поэтому крупные управляющие компании, которые предоставляют финансирование казахстанским компаниям, которые конкурентны на глобальном уровне, только при условии соблюдения этих требований. Мы посетили круглый стол IFC, где были приглашены различные компании, и управляющие не сказали, мы обязательно смотрим, как уровни экологичных стандартов выполняются. Поэтому мы, как биржа, взяли на себя эту роль, пропагандируем методологию, планируем ввести это в обязательном порядке. И также в рамках поддержки возможностей женщин проводим в честь 8 марта, так сказать, открытие торгов. Спасибо.
Thank you. Thank you very much for this statement. If I compare, by the way, our panel with the panel I was in the morning with the Prime Minister. There was no woman. We have 3 here, so I believe that we're doing a reasonably good job. Huh? And finally, I would like to hand over to Dinara. Dinara, I believe as well that you should, from your perspective as a Kazakh businesswoman, give us some indications how you see SDGs in the business, real business life of Kazakh companies, and how you see this in the development for the next years.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It actually feels really nice to be in this panel because I've been in business for the last 3 weeks. Before then, I was with Bayterek, and actually I was starting to work on this, organizing this panel as a host. And today I'm here as a guest. So thank you, and it's a very touchy feeling. I also would like to say that I'm one of the co-signers to this famous report. There were 26 of us, and we worked for 2 years trying to estimate the potential business opportunity from SDGs. And we estimated the potential opportunity to be $12 trillion at least. So to me, it's not a brainer that business has to participate in the sustainable development. First of all, because basically governments don't have enough money and they don't have enough time. The agenda has to be fulfilled by 2030. Investment in infrastructure alone amounts to 2.6 trillion, and government budgets are not unlimited. And this is taking into account that businesses, even big ones, like to optimize on taxes. They don't like to pay taxes in full. They create optimization structures. They use tax havens. So the governments cannot deal with this alone. But that being said, I also think that this is not only a social responsibility for businesses to show that businesses are cool if they participate in the SDGs. Actually, it's a profitable businesses. Businesses can make money. They can do good and make money at the same time. Let me provide some statistics. The total economic price from implementing the global goals could be $12 trillion, but could be 2-3 times bigger, assuming that the benefits are captured across the whole economy and accompanied by much higher labor and resource productivity. A 2014 McKinsey study found that focusing on sustainability can yield large cost savings. Many companies have achieved an average internal rate of 27% on their low-carbon investments. Unilever, one of the leaders on SDGs, has found that out of 200,000 brands that they have internal brands, their brands for a clear sense of social or environmental purpose are growing at twice the rate of other brands in the company's portfolio. Companies managed with a long-term perspective and hard focus on sustainability are better financial performers. A major study by Harvard and London Business School found that $1 invested in 1993 in a value-weighted portfolio of high sustainability firms would have grown to $22 by 2010, compared to only $15 for low sustainability firms. So in my view, SDGs, it's not only a nice and kind idea, but it's actually a wonderful and beautiful idea of this century that provides businesses with opportunity to increase their profit margins, return on their investments, and higher confidence for investors and management. Henry Ford said that business that generates only money is a poor business. And the pie can be much bigger if everybody participates in the creation in its creation. So let's go for it. Let's make the world better and make money. Thank you.
Dinara, thank you so much for this statement. I have seen already first a yellow flag and finally a red flag that we should come to an end, and unfortunately we don't have time anymore to hand over to the floor. But I would like first of all to thank all panelists for participating, and especially I'm very grateful for Bayderek and you, Ida, that you have organized this panel, and thank you for the support. And I'm sure that SDGs now will be on the list of awareness for everybody of us. And so I'm very much looking forward that we can develop this very important issue as well, and not to see it only as something which is on the agenda of panels, but on the long run. Thank you so much for joining us this morning, and have still a wonderful day and a wonderful weekend. Thank you.